Welcome to our Fireside chat on stable tokens here in Wyoming. I'm Summer Wasson from the Cheyenne Technology Advisory Council, or CTAC, and I'm joined today by our CTAC President Matt Fields and fellow members Caitlin Russ and Paul Ogle. You guys want to say hello?
Hey, Summer. Thanks.
Hello.
Hello.
All right. So today we're talking about Wyoming's crypto landscape. So a quick poll here. How many of us, I guess, show of hands or just a quick hello, how many of you have dabbled in cryptocurrency?
Yeah.
Not
Wallets.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wallets, mining, exchanges. So
Of course, Steve has, right? Well, Wyoming is known for its wide open spaces, but it's also pioneering in a way too in the world of finance. So the state of Wyoming has just launched the Frontier Stable Token, which is ticker symbol FRNT. So it's the first stable coin to be issued by a public entity in the United States, which is kind of exciting. And this isn't just another token, it's a potential blueprint for the future use of government payments, public finance, digital transactions. So to help us unpack all of this and what it means, we have a great guest with us today. So Steve Lupien from the University of Wyoming. He's from the Center for Blockchain and Digital Innovation. So Steve, I'm just going to have you go ahead and introduce yourself.
Well, sure. Thank you. Thank you so much, Summer, and rest of the panel. Thank you for inviting me. Yeah, I'm a faculty member at the University of Wyoming. I teach in accounting and finance, and I lead the blockchain initiatives across campus. And I'm also the Ada Lovelace Director of the Center for Blockchain and Digital Innovation. And we're the center of excellence on campus that deals with disruptive business technology. And so that not only is that blockchain and cryptocurrencies, but we also deal with the metaverse, what's happening with AI as it applies to being disruptive to business, things like digital twinning. And so the University of Wyoming is actually leaning in pretty heavily on these business technologies because, quite frankly, they're the future of all of our lives. And so having a place here in Wyoming where we can really explore these new technologies and work with our community and our business partners around how to deploy these technologies successfully, I think is going to help position the state of Wyoming in among our, or certainly ahead of our peers. That's our goal.
Fantastic. Thanks, Steve. So to kind of help unpack this for our audience, who could be the general public, they could be other tech experts as well. But I mean, just to kind of lay a good foundation, what exactly is a stable token? What is a stable coin? And what is Frontier Stable Token?
Yeah, let me take one little bit of a step back, and I want to kind of introduce the audience the same way I would in my academic programs, because a lot of people are often they intermix terms sometimes, and I think it creates a lot of confusion. You know, for example, like when I turn on the business news channels in the morning while I'm getting ready to go to school, you know, I'll see tick symbols for different types of tokens, different utilities of tokens, all listed at the same time. It'll say, here's the price of Bitcoin, and here's the price of Ethereum, and here's the price of Litecoin. And conceivably, we'll see, here's the price of Frontier Coin. And that makes an assumption that one, everyone understands what they're looking at when they see it on the screen. And number two, I think it creates an equivalency that I think is misleading to those that are trying to understand this asset class. So when I begin teaching my classes, and I'm on my first week of what is this technology all about, I describe digital assets, and I prefer that term over cryptocurrency because cryptocurrency is a subset of digital assets. But I describe digital assets as a four-legged stool. One leg of the stool is store of value tokens. This is Bitcoin. These are Bitcoin. Best way to describe it is it's a digital gold. It has a lot of the properties of digital gold. It, generates value. You can't walk into McDonald's and buy a Big Mac fries and a Coke with a bar of gold. You can't really do it with Bitcoin right now either, but that doesn't mean it doesn't have value. It's actually, from a stock to flow standpoint, an academic measurement that us economists use, Bitcoin is actually the hardest money that's now available in the world, which is a very positive thing. But that's one leg of the stool. Another leg of the stool is business systems. And this is where you typically find the Ethereum and the Ethereum-esque Cardano, Polkadot, those types of layer one chains. They're running business applications. And in many cases, they're business applications that are running on your phone, just like any other business application you'd have. The only difference is their back of the house operation operates on a blockchain network. Now let's talk about the third leg of the stool, which is stablecoins. Stablecoins are, I think, the most revolutionary today member of this asset class. We are going to see incredible development in stablecoins, I believe, in the next 6 months to 3 years. The way that you're going to be paying for things every day is going to change. And you are going to migrate from using credit cards and debit cards and vehicles that have intermediaries like your bank or MasterCard or Visa or American Express. Those are intermediaries that impose cost and they impose time delays and complexity in the payment systems. And we're going to go to a peer-to-peer system where you're going to have a digital wallet on your phone and you're going to have value in your digital wallet like Frontier Coin, and you're going to make peer-to-peer payments, either by taking a picture with your camera of a QR code, or simply tapping your phone like you probably do now, and using the near field communications system to make the transaction. But the difference here is the lack of the intermediary, which is really crucial. The other interesting thing about stablecoins is in their name. They're stable. They are usually denominated in something. Here in the US, inevitably, we're going to be using stable coins that are denominated in US dollars. And you're going to be making payments just like you do today. You will be able to walk into McDonald's and buy a Big Mac fry and a Coke with a stable coin denominated in US dollars, and you're going to make that transaction. It's going to imitate cash because it's peer-to-peer. Cash is a peer-to-peer vehicle. I want to buy my Big Mac fries and a Coke. I take $10 out of my traditional wallet. I hand it to McDonald's. They now have the $10. We're going to be able to do that in electronic formats. And for those who are like, well, what's the big deal of that? Well, quite frankly, programmable money is going to bring a whole bunch of advantages to the way that we interact. So stablecoins are the third leg of the stool, and we're going to spend more time talking about those. The fourth leg of the stool is something called NFTs. NFTs are the ability to make a token representation of anything physical. And that's going to be able to change the way that you monetize certain assets. How do you sell a share of a apartment building, for example? Hard to do without a lot of regulatory challenges. Well, we can tokenize a part of that apartment building, and you can get a whole bunch of advantages either through, if you live in that apartment building, using the token to pay for your rent, or quite honestly, as some sort of, I don't want to say investment because that's not really the right way of phrasing it, more like a crowdsourcing opportunity. So those are the four legs of the stool that are going to change radically for all of us because of the acceptance that's now happening with digital assets. What the state of Wyoming did with its Frontier Coin is truly revolutionary. We are the first, and those of us that live in Wyoming are not surprised when they hear, Wyoming is the first in many things. And we're the first one to really push the frontier on how a government entity can operate using this new asset class. And I think over the course of the next 6 months to a year, a number of different use cases are going to come forward utilizing Frontier Coin that could include things like, government assistance payments, could be airdropped to your phone and, instantly. It may involve lottery winnings or lottery purchases. There's any number of different ways. I'd love to say what other states say, which is you can pay your taxes with it, but we don't have taxes. So that one, that one's a good one that we don't have to engage with it. But Wyoming has truly taken a unique lead with this stablecoin, and as more and more use cases become available for this, I think the folks of Wyoming are going to be pleased and amazed by how this technology is going to help us.
Okay, so Steve, real quick, I want to jump on two things. The fourth leg you just talked about, where it's an NFT, a representation of something that actually exists.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's pretty similar to you going down to the, your city or whatever else, the state, and getting a certificate of title for your vehicle.
Yep.
Where it's a representation of the ownership of that vehicle,
yep,
recorded at a certain level within the state itself. Same thing. You could also have your certificate of title for the house and stuff.
Matt, is it the same thing? Okay.
Is it the same thing?
Well, except there's an intermediary involved. Okay. Why do we need the government to tell me I own a car? Okay. Can't technology solve that problem for us? When I go and get a title for my car, the government makes money off of that. When I want to do a title search on a home I'm buying, okay, that could be thousands of dollars for the government to say, yeah, Matt, you own this house and you're allowed to sell that house to Steve. There's a technology now that can track the provenance of any asset from the time it's created all the way through the time of sale that gives you that same level of trust and certainty without the friction in the middle that involves a intermediary. That's the promise of this type of technology.
So how does a state entity then attest that your claim, your NFT, is the actual claim?
Well, the state's not the one that does that. The actual blockchain system does. Let me give you a simple example. Let's use a car example because everybody understands it. Okay. If your car is manufactured on August 1st of 2023, okay, and there's a record posted on a blockchain that shows that Ford manufactured this F-150 on that date, okay, then another posting, because the data on blockchains are immutable. You can't erase data, okay? So 3 weeks later, Ford sells that F-150 to Laramie Ford, okay? And now there's a record that shows it's at Laramie Ford, okay? 2 weeks after that, it's sold to Caitlin. And Caitlin, a record is now posted that Caitlin now owns that Ford F-150. Now, Matt, you want to buy that car off of Caitlin, okay? Do you need the government to tell you that Caitlin owns that car? No, we have an immutable record from the date that this is Wyoming, that from the time that F-150 was manufactured all the way to Caitlin's hands. If you are confident that the person that's selling you that truck, Matt, is Caitlin, why does the government need to validate that? You've got a chain of record that shows that Caitlin owns that truck. And when you buy that truck, now you'll be entered in that chain of record. And now there's immutable proof that you own it. Why do we need the government stepping in? We've always needed the government to step in before because we've never had this immutable chain that provides really indisputable trust. It was the best way we could do it historically. Now we can do it with math. And math, I mean, Matt, you're a computer science guy of the highest order. I'm sure you trust the math of your computer systems more than you would trust the fallibility of man. And I think that's where the advantage is. There is no fraud. You can't have somebody at motor vehicles fudge a record. Not saying they do in Wyoming, but when you take out intermediaries, you provide greater trust. And you can do that to a house title. I mean, anyone who's bought a house knows you spend thousands of dollars to do a title search. Technology can do that.
Yeah. I mean, going back to your same vehicle case, then, if you were to buy a vehicle with the blockchain in the background, it's no different than going to Carfax and checking the history of a VIN number. You're going to see the entire history.
I don't want to disparage a company, so I won't mention one, but a company like Carfax was actually implicated in rolling back odometer numbers on some of the cars that they were selling, to increase their profitability. You put an intermediate in there, you open up the opportunity for fraud.
Yeah. So I guess that immutable piece of trust is pretty critical for this.
Yeah.
So
and this technology does that perfectly because of the immutability of the data. And by the way, that's equally important if we go back to the stablecoin question, because I serve on a number of law enforcement task forces, and it's a common misconception that digital assets are used commonly in crime. The dumbest thing you can do today is use a digital asset in crime, because that immutability of data applies to all tokens. I mean, we can literally track where tokens go wallet to wallet. Doesn't reach the level where it's like, this is Summer's wallet. But if you know an IP address and you're law enforcement, you can easily figure out, where something is from an asset standpoint. So quite honestly, using digital assets will actually make our monetary system safer than briefcases full of $100 bills. And someone's got to explain to me why briefcases full of $100 bills are always that shiny metal silver cases. I mean, why doesn't anybody put $100 bills into leather bags? Don't know, but really, digital assets are considerably safer than even using fiat currency.
Yeah. Okay.
I
would agree with that.
Oh, go ahead, Caitlin.
Well, I was just going to ask about, the risk of cyber attacks. We're talking about, how this data is trustworthy, and I do agree with that. But what protections are in place for that data?
That's a great question, Caitlin. And quite honestly, technology does a wonderful job of solving the problems that are created by technology. I've been in the digital asset space going back, the very first digital asset I ever bought was out of a Bitcoin vending machine. And it gave me a little piece of thermal paper that had my private keys on it. And I'm embarrassed to admit this. I've lost that piece of paper long ago. So, that I'll never get that, that piece of Bitcoin back. But today, there's multiple layers of protection that you can use to safeguard your digital assets. And layer one hacks, this is a hack on the Bitcoin network layer, or the ADA layer, or the Solana layer. Those are actually fairly rare. Where the hacks tend to happen is applications that are laid on top of those layers. And so you do have to do your work. You have to investigate a little bit to make sure you do the right solutions. But there are solutions today where you can download your digital assets out of either your exchange account or your DeFi account and put it onto essentially a flash drive that you throw into your sock drawer. And if somebody, for somebody to actually get a hold of your digital assets, they'd have to, steal a flash drive out of your sock drawer. It's the equivalent of taking all your money out of the bank and hiding it under your mattress. It's relatively safe from a hacking standpoint. But there are other advantages as well too. There are systems like, I don't like mentioning one, but here's a very good one called Casa, where you memorize a series of seed phrases. And if you have access to the internet anywhere in the world, as long as you can get to, Casa's website and be able to read back your seed phrase, then your assets can follow you. A lot of people don't realize that it's generally illegal in the United States to travel with more than $10,000. You've got to make claims all over the place. Civil asset forfeiture is a real thing, unfortunately. And so imagine you're a refugee and you're trying to get out of Ukraine, okay? All you need to do now is memorize seed phrases, and you can go anywhere in the world and have your asset travel with you. Can't be confiscated, can't be stolen. So as you understand the deeper layers of how to protect yourself, then, quite honestly, I think today those challenges are mitigated more than they've ever been. Just always remember, technology does a great job of solving the problems of technology. And payment systems are going to, like things like Frontier Coin, you're just going to scan a QR code on your phone, or you're just going to tap your phone, and those transactions are going to happen automatically, and there really is no opportunity for failure in those types of transactions.
Thank you.
Summer, you had a question?
Yeah. So the state has already used FRNT and pilot programs to reduce contractor payments from like 45 days to a few seconds. So what kind of real world problems can a stablecoin like FRNT solve for Wyoming businesses, government agencies, citizens?
Sure. Yeah, the promise it really brings, in my opinion, are really twofold. Yes, using some of the new electronic systems like FedNow, through the banking system, you do get relatively quick payments. But what you're not eliminating is friction and fees. When you're using these banking services, they charge, multiple percentage points to do these transactions. And that's coming out of somewhere. When we use our credit cards, we're generally paying an interest rate on the credit card, but the merchant is also paying 3 to 4%. So $100 purchase at your restaurant, they're only getting $96 or $97 actually paid to them because of that friction. So there's cost associated with these legacy systems. There's also counterparty risk. In the last year, we've seen a number of banks go under: Silicon Valley Bank, Signature Bank, and others. And that's created counterparty risk that may slow down or even create challenges of getting paid through the banking systems. When you go to a peer-to-peer system, the state is going to essentially, using a digital asset term, airdrop. They're going to be able to just drop value directly into vendors' wallets without friction, without fees, instantaneously. And it would be the equivalent of them walking up to this vendor and handing them, $100 bills, and have it automatically going into the vendor's bank account. So even though we have a pretty good system today, Summer, it can be made better. And that's by eliminating that friction, eliminating that cost, and completely eliminating counterparty risk, because there are no counterparties. The payments will go directly from the state, their electronic wallet, directly to a vendor's electronic wallet instantly.
With the backing of that immutable record.
With the backing of the immutable record.
One of the things that I really love about technology is the ability to streamline and make processes better, faster. And I think because of that, I like, making systems digitized. But if we go back to like the purchasing of a car scenario, right? You've got that immutable record, that chain of custody for where the vehicle came from and who's now owning the vehicle. And
Right.
if those transactions can then be further interfaced to like the government entities who require registration, right? I could see maybe that full cycle of having that digital information available to government organizations, from citizen clear up to all of that government process that could be streamlined.
And there's something else too that we haven't talked about yet, which is an important component as well too, which is programmable money. And programmable money, I think, has a incredibly positive side, but also a potentially dangerous side. So we can talk about both of those real quick. But let's talk about the positive side. We can now, using smart contracts, which are an inherent part of digital asset transactions, we can have transactions happen automatically as a result of certain things called oracles. Let me give you 2 examples. Okay. Say, for example, you're a you're a farmer and you're growing corn in the southeastern part of the state. Okay. And a hailstorm hits you. Okay. Traditionally, what would you do? You would go out, you survey your damage, and you'd go, oh crap, I got whacked by hail, I've lost, this amount of my crop. Let me call my insurance company. And you're going to get on the phone, you're going to call your insurance company. Your insurance company is going to send an adjuster out who's going to come and look at your damage. There's probably going to be some negotiation back and forth, and you're probably talking weeks, if not months, for your payment to happen. Okay. Using an oracle. Now, what would an oracle be? An oracle is a trigger or a signal in a smart contract that an event has happened. We could use, like, for example, the National Weather Service. If the National Weather Service, issues a warning or announces that where your farm is just got hit by a hailstorm, okay, that would be the oracle that would trigger your insurance company to automatically send you a peer-to-peer payment from their wallet to your wallet instantly. Okay. You don't have to call your insurance company. You don't have to send an adjuster out, because this is all negotiated into that smart contract. And that payment happens when you need it the most. Another great example is, I was driving up near Lusk not that long ago, and a deer decided to take off the front of my Volvo. Okay. Now, it didn't trigger my airbag, but it triggered my airbag sensor. And I have that, automatic, it calls the police through my, through a button on my phone. Okay. Well, the triggering of that accident in my car would be an oracle, and it could notify my insurance company that an accident happened, and they could automatically put money into my account. So the very next morning I could get, a rental car, so I wouldn't have to go through the whole adjustment phase. So those aspects of programmable money, I think, are going to change the way we do business, because it's going to take away the friction that happens in business transactions. So that's the positive side. Okay. Going to be honest with you. There's a negative side that we need to be careful of. But the good news is we have something here called the US Constitution, which is going to protect us. And the negative side of that is, say, for example, a future administration decides that people of Wyoming are spending too much money on gasoline. Okay. Well, programmable money also means money could be cancelable. Okay. And they could basically say, after you spend $200 a month in gasoline, your wallet's not going to work anymore on gas. Or through national health care, your BMI exceeds 25. Well, you know what? We're not going to let you buy a Big Mac fries and a Coke. Okay. Now, I think our system and the way Americans think are not going to tolerate that. So I'm not as concerned about that as I am. I mean, China does it now. A number of other countries do it now. And quite frankly, to some lesser extent, the US does have some capacity in doing that if you're on government assistance and you have a SNAP card, you can't buy candy or soda or things like that. So the concept of programmable money does exist. We just need to be diligent as Americans that we don't allow the negative aspects of this technology to creep in. One of the examples I like to use with my classes is our Fourth Amendment. I think our Fourth Amendment is one of our most powerful amendments. It prevents the government from illegal searches and seizures. Right now, if you are accused of a financial crime, then law enforcement would have to go to a judge, and the judge would have to issue a warrant, which would then go to your financial institution, and your financial institution would, through their lawyers, evaluate the validity of that warrant and then react to it. So a very important protection we have as Americans. If we went to a totally programmable money, like what China does and North Korea does and Iran does, now they don't have Fourth Amendments, but listen to how absurd this statement would be. How likely is it that the government would go to a judge to compel the government to release government information to the government? Okay, your Fourth Amendment goes away. And so, although I am 100% behind this asset class, it's going to change our world. It doesn't mean we as Americans should give up our diligence of our rights over how these assets work. So, and so again, I've had this conversation with our governor. I'm not worried about our governor today, taking those liberties away from us. I'm worried about 4 governors from now. That's where we need to be diligent as folks. But I will tell you the advantages of this programmable money way outweigh the disadvantages as long as we continue to make sure that our rights are protected.
Yeah. So Steve, I guess one question I would have in terms of the programmable money. So FRST, basically our FRNT actually is considered programmable money. And from the standpoint within the state as a business, if I was to transact with someone, the cost of that, right now I can pay anywhere from 1% up to 5 or 6, even 6%. So what does that do? Let's say we have Joe's repair shop up in Moorcroft, Wyoming. And Joe has people that are, he's working on their vehicles, fixing them, taking care of things. What does that mean if Joe has the ability to receive FRNT payments and the person paying has the ability to do FRNT payments? What does that do for the costs?
Well, Matt, by the way, that is the $1 million question. You zoomed right in on the biggest challenge that the state has today. Okay, this is brand new. Okay, this type of payment system is going to become valuable when we build up enough use cases that you don't have to necessarily worry about paying the fees, because you're going to purchase your FRNT probably from an exchange. I believe I heard that the first exchange that was going to operate with this was Kraken. Kraken is a Wyoming company, so we want that. Kraken's a wonderful company. They are a big supporter of our program at the university, so I have nothing but positive things to say. But we need to build up critical mass. And if you're going out and purchasing FRNT and adding an additional layer to your payment process, early on, there's going to be some degree of inconvenience. When that changes is when, it becomes much more ubiquitous in our financial system, and we are getting FRNT put into our wallets through secondary sources, and they're going out of our wallets in secondary sources, and we're not necessarily going to exchanges and turning it into fiat and back and forth. We need to build that critical mass. And I think it's going to happen relatively quickly, because I think the advantages of this are all going to play out. But I mean, an example of that would be, okay, I'm making this up. Lottery winnings go into your digital wallet. You can then use your lottery winnings and go to a grocery store and buy something at the grocery store, and you've eliminated those fees because the money didn't come in through an exchange, and the grocery store can then pay their vendors with FRNT, so there's no fees there. We need to build up a little bit of that critical mass. It's going to happen. It's probably going to happen relatively quickly if the state is creative in the ways that they allow the value to come in and go out. But it's not going to have the immediate benefits that you would think until that critical mass is built.
Okay. Paul, you had a question?
Yeah, shout out to the University of Wyoming. I guess I graduated like a few years too early to get on board with the crypto, but I got my CS degree. I got my CS degree from there, so we were just beginning to, I think, talk about crypto by the time I left.
Right. We have adult programs, Paul. Welcome back. Come on back.
Maybe I'll have to go see if I paid all my my Transpark bills. But to go back to that point, I think, Bitcoin has been around for so long. And I remember the poor sap story where it's like the first big transaction that was like people talked about was the guy who bought 2 pizzas or something. And he paid something like 15,000. Yeah, 10 to 15,000. Yeah. That's like 15 years ago. And I'm wondering at what point do we have to talk about when we're going to reach critical mass, right? I can't still go out and really use Bitcoin and McDonald's like we want to. I can't use Ethereum like we want to. Right. So it seems like the crypto industry and the people who are involved in it are forever chasing the idea of this critical mass, right? This utopia where I can just go use my coin somewhere. Well, here we are 15 years in, man. I still don't see it.
Well, first of all, Paul, 15 years is not that long.
I know.
And one of the interesting things, and the Bitcoin maxis are going to yell at me when I make this next statement. So please, I'm a Bitcoin maxi. I'm wearing my Bitcoin sweatshirt, everybody. So be gentle on me. The Bitcoin never lived up to its promise as a payment system because of stablecoins. A better technology came out. And Bitcoin is a wonderful store of value. As I mentioned, from a stock to flow standpoint, it's the hardest money on the planet. And I will not be critical of Bitcoin, but it just doesn't and never did have the transaction speeds that you really need. And number two, Paul, it's hard to use something that has the volatility of Bitcoin as a payment system. The volatility, by the way, is a feature, not a bug. It's one of the reasons why Bitcoin is at 118 today, somewhere around there. And 3 years ago, we were buying Bitcoin at 3,000. So the volatility is a wonderful thing for a store of value. As I said, Paul, technology has a wonderful way of solving the problems of technology, and stable coins are that answer. So I think we finally do have the right vehicle that's going to fulfill that promise of an electronic monetary system that Bitcoin doesn't. Now, I absolutely feel sorry for the guy that spent $10,000 on 2 Domino's pizzas. By the way, the last time I computed that, which was probably 6 months ago, had he kept those 10,000 Bitcoins, he'd have a B handle, he'd be a billionaire. Okay. But at the time, he essentially thought he got 2 free pizzas. So, if the value of Bitcoin at the time was like 0.0000000, whatever, when he did that transaction. So, quite frankly, although it is a pretty, extreme example of why you hold a store of value, anything, look at how fiat currency has decreased in value over the last 30 years. I mean, nobody's buying a loaf of bread for 15 cents anymore. So you can make that same argument, just not quite as extreme. I would prefer, Paul, to have 10,000 Bitcoins in my wallet right now. But, at the time, I don't think it was a bad transaction. It just didn't prove out over time to be a good investment.
Yeah, he did. That person did state recently that he does not regret that transaction.
Correct.
that he's essentially
I
locked
would have.
himself into history.
I'd regret it every day of my life.
Yeah, Matt, what are you gonna say either? You know, gee, you want two pizzas or be a billionaire 15 years later? But you're absolutely right. Yeah, I recently saw an interview with him where he just said, "I just don't think about it."
So I have one more question along with stable, and then I can pass to Caitlin if that's all right. But we talk about stable coins, but what about the unstable coins that are rug pulls, right? All these individuals coming out with, meme coins and stuff.
Yep.
What is that just a byproduct of the industry growth and trying to mature in a space of finance?
Another great question, Paul. One of the things we really teach in our program is understanding utility. There are over 20,000 coins out there. Quite frankly, I think there's 20 or 30 that I track on a regular basis. I tend to be a bit of a financial libertarian, and I think your money is your money. And if you want to spend your money on something pointless or stupid, I think you should have the legal right to do that. I spend a lot of time with my students understanding that utility. What is the purpose of that coin? Now, look, I get a lot of criticism over things like the Trump meme coin. Okay, I view that coin as a collectible. Okay, I'm embarrassed to say this, but I remember growing up in my grandmother's house when she was alive, and in her dining room she had a hutch that had all these Franklin Mint commemorative plates of every president that that was alive when she bought the plate. Okay, did she feel that she wasted money on those commemorative plates? No, she enjoyed them. She held on to them. They meant something to her. Frankly, when she died, was there any secondary value in her Franklin commemorative plate of Harry S. Truman? No, but it brought her joy. So there are tokens out there that I think are simply collectibles. Others have some degree of utility to them. I think it's incumbent upon us as consumers, of controllers of our money, to understand what we spend our money on. I'll take it a step further. I think fraud is fraud. And if you go out there and you misrepresent what your token is doing, and you do launch a token purely for fraud's sake, I think you should go to jail. Fraud is fraud. But I don't want us to remove all responsibility from the purchaser either. Understand what you're spending money on. And I don't think it's that difficult. The information is out there. We live in an information age, which is more powerful today than it's been in all of our human history. The purchaser, Paul, needs some responsibility too. But prosecute the fraudsters. They need to be dealt with.
Question. I want to be mindful of our time. Caitlin?
Sure. My question is just real quick about the critical mass. So how can Wyomingites get involved to help increase the critical mass use in Wyoming?
To some extent, this is not going to be a popular answer. Right now, I think it's incumbent more on the governor's office and the Stablecoin Commission, which, by the way, I think has done a wonderful job. I think it's incumbent upon them to build use cases. What do I mean by that? I think they need to reach out to merchant service companies and make sure that you can walk into a McDonald's and use it for Big Mac fries and a Coke. I think they need to look at where transfers of money happen from the government to users and create those portals. It's going to be difficult to utilize this coin if that infrastructure is not in place. Now, again, you can go to Kraken. I'm not sure if you can do it yet, so please don't hold me to this. I know they're working on it, but you're going to be able to go and you're going to be able to purchase this token. You're going to be able to put it in your wallet. Okay, you can do that today, but if there's or soon, but if there's not a utility, it's going to sit there. And so, the university will be more than willing to work with the state on this. We've been a partner with the Stablecoin Commission since it was, proposed at the very beginning. But I think the next step really does fall upon the state to create those use cases so that it becomes very easy for those of us that want to use it for commerce to use it for commerce. It's hard for us to show up as individuals and say to McDonald's, "Hey, I've got Frontier coin in my wallet. Will you take it?" And if their merchant terminal doesn't take it, their merchant terminal doesn't take it. So I think that's the next step, and I think that's where the focus needs to be. And I'm willing to, I'm speaking from my center at the university. We are willing to help the state in any way we can identify those use cases. I mean, one of the organizations, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but I'm going to get in trouble anyway. We have been having communications with Wyolato. I think that's a great use case for using something like this, because I do think that is one of those use cases that will bring utility to folks that want to be able to use it. You take your winnings and you either buy more lottery tickets, which is a good thing for the state, or you walk into McDonald's, you scan your wallet, and your winnings from your last Wyolato buys you a Big Mac, fries, and a Coke. I think that's the type of use cases we need to identify and get in place.
And that is a great question, Caitlin. So I was going to ask something similar in that, it's not available to the public yet. And if we want to grow and create awareness around it, which will in turn scale its usability or usage, there's an understanding that has to be made across the public. And, you guys know that in my job, I am communicating about really complex topics, atmospheric research and supercomputing, right? And I imagine it's a similar challenge to communicate what is crypto, what is a stable coin, how do we use it? And you're probably doing that kind of communication right now at the government level, right? Or C level, but to get our end users to understand that as well. I'm sure that's a challenge for everything.
And if I could come over a little bit of the top on this as well, too. Since the Genius Act was passed in Washington several months ago, Genius Act was a bipartisan bill that passed through Congress. That alone is shocking, and was signed into law by the president. So the Genius Act is law. It regulates and identifies stablecoins. And we're going to see a lot of other entities do a lot of the work that the state is going to benefit from. Okay. If Tether or Circle or other stable coins go out there and do the work with the merchant services people, it's interchangeable. If you want to buy your Big Mac, fries, and a Coke with USDT, which is Tether, the same system needs to be in place for FRNT. So it's not necessarily just the state's heavy lift. We're about to see a revolution in the way that payment systems are going to happen across the board. And, everyone's work is going to be leveraged across everyone's work. So it's not going to be my dear friend Anthony Apollo going out and visiting every bank and saying, please accept Frontier coin. This is going to happen organically as this industry now reacts to the legislation that's finally passed.
No, that's great. Well, Steve, I think we've run out of time here. So everyone on the CTAC panel, thank you so much for joining in. For anyone that's interested in it, you can go check out the stable token. It is at stableToken.wyo.gov. You can also follow the CTAC channel here on YouTube, and that's available for anyone to look at and see what we posted out there. So Steve, thank you again. I appreciate it. Great insights.
If anybody wants to reach out to me directly at the university, please feel free to do so. That is part of my responsibility at the university is public outreach, and I'm more than happy to work with anyone who wants to learn more.
Great.
Before we let Steve go, blockchain stampede next week.
Correct.
Yes.
Thank you for bringing that up. Monday and Tuesday, the Wyoming Legislators Select Committee will be meeting on campus in the co-library. I believe it's 504. So if you want to see how the digital asset legislative sausage is made, then Monday and Tuesday are the days. Tuesday in the Union, we're having Bitcoin Day, where we're going to put Bitcoin miners, power companies, regulators, all in a room together and kind of do a celebrity death match and have them work out, all of the challenges that Wyoming still needs to overcome. And then on Wednesday is remember the leg of the stool, which was the business applications. Wednesday is our big business applications day, also at the Union at UW. They run all day. You get a free lunch, and you get to hear people chatting about what's going on in this asset class. So thank you, Summer, for reminding me. And we'd love to have anybody who wants to come by the university participate. No cost. Come on by.
I know that this may get on our YouTube channel after next week, but this has been going on for how many years?
8 years, and there is nothing in the digital asset space that's 8 years old. So we kind of led the pack in that, and thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah. So every year around this time, expect to look into the blockchain stampede. Thanks, Matt.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Bye now.
See ya. Bye.